Alright guys, welcome back. I'm going to turn this patch into a brand new piece of ceiling. And as you can see, wallpaper around the edges here. So they're all going to need stripped off around, and I need to add a button across this back wall here as there's cornice and there's nothing to fix the plasterboard to. So got my wood and my plasterboard. Also need to strip the nails off, the old nails off the joists. But hopefully get it all done in one cut. Just pull the nails out and use them just to hold up these wires because they're all kind of hanging loose. So I've put them halfway up the joist, clear of any screws, and of course using this one or two needles. I do need to just trim this back, as you can see, with a nice sharp Stanley blade. Just cutting it as much as possible, trying to get the skim off, and then I'm going to try and grab the board so I can snap it away. Try to be careful, do not want to damage the cornice. Again, I could repair the cornice, but it would be a lot of extra work, a lot of extra time. So the name of the game is just to keep the original intact, so I don't have to pull out a joint around and start tidying that all up. Awesome. And you can see the reason for this damage has been a leak. So quite a bad leak there. I think they said that it was a small leak, they got that fixed, and then I think the shower then leaked as well. So I do think they had a bit of a nightmare with it. But we're here now. Get it all looking pretty again. Does sometimes has to get a bit dirtier before it gets pretty, as thankfully they do have everything covered up for me on this job, so I just have to get it all replastered. Don't worry about stuff dropping, guys, it's all on a dust sheet. But yeah, we're starting to look pretty good. I'm just sort of scribing it back at a bit of an angle so that when I cut my board that it won't be, too bumpy on the edge. I'd rather it being flush on that edge if possible. Again, I've marked all my joists, both sides, and some are a wee bit loose, but I usually do secondary marking with a couple of screws, which not only keeps the joist marked, but it also, pulls up that old board at the edge. There's what I thought was the last nail. I think I found another one shortly after. But yeah, as you can see, everything's covered up here for me, thankfully. And again, what you'll notice as well is it's bright here when I'm starting. So see if that sunshine lasts. But yeah, I've got the board cut roughly here, and I'm just giving it a bit of a check to see where it needs adjusted to fit, because I know it's very rare that you cut a patch and it just fits straight away in one go, especially a larger one like this. The board I'm using here, I think it's like 3 foot by 6 foot. Did need to cut sort of like a half a foot off the edge of it. So it was a good buy, buying a smaller board, but it's going to be a slight bit shy on the right hand side. So what I'll do is I'll try and keep one side tight, and I will, just put a wee slither in. I hate cutting in wee slithers, but I would rather cut a slither than to rely on a big bit of scrim, because when you go to fill that, it tends to want to drop out and bulge, and you never really get that type of joint flattened until like the last trowel. So I'd rather have it filled in with a wee bit of board first. But here's me just doing a bit of joinery now, and the way I went about it here, I thought I was going to have to put sort of like noggins across and things before I attach this, but actually when I put the timber in, I think I'm using something like it's quite a chunky bit of timber, and it's treated as well, so if there is any moisture there, it'll never affect this timber anyway. But what I can do is I can just sister it off the joist that's on the back wall, that's above the cornice, and if I lay it on its belly here, it actually gives me plenty to screw to. That's kind of what we're after. We'll want a good fixing point at the back there, so that I'm not worried about the board bouncing at the end. And there's my big screws that I'm using here. I've already got one end of the joist, and I've screwed either end of plasterboard, so I know it's running as straight as possible. Unfortunately, the cornice has bellied a wee slight bit due to the moisture. It's obviously got wet and it's just sagged a bit. And then when it dries out, guys, it stays that shape. Possibly you could soak it all down and prop it up with something and then let it dry again. But that would take days to do. Or you could cut the whole section out and rerun a nice straight piece. But again, all these things they're a wee bit too much work and money involved for basically the owner's just happy just patch it. Obviously, it did highlight that the cornice did have a bit of a bow and he knew it as well. But happy enough just to get the big hole in their dining room here sorted. And again, the the bow in the cornice isn't all that very much obvious. And obviously, when I plaster the patch in, it'll straighten it up or make it look that bit straighter along that angle also. But here I am. Preparation's key, guys. You can see the preparation work I'm putting into this. Quite a bit of effort, putting in extra timber, making sure that the paper, all the loose edges are done. I did think paper was only on one edge, but later on found that it's actually on the other edge too, which can be a bit of a nuisance when it comes skimming, because once the paper gets wet, it tends to want to come off, and then once you're traveling up, it tends to end up in the plaster and stuff, making wee bit of a mess, bit of a nightmare. But as long as you find out and you get it stripped back a bit so that you can patch into the existing. Again, I think the idea will be, I think he's going to try and take the paper off nice and square somewhere and then just repaint this area, or maybe repaint that area and then paint the whole lot. I don't think he's going to bother trying to put paper all up again in this section. But either way, we'll do as best a patch as possible so that decorating is as easy as possible. And again, as you probably notice in the preparation that I'm doing here, that the idea is that this patch will, it'll outlive myself hopefully. As long as there's no more leaks, if everything's all perfect, then this patch will last quite some time. But I'll just show you this, guys. Just getting something prepped up here, sort of off camera. What I want to show you is this very, very quickly. So you can see sometimes when these boards sort of have damage, they tend to sag down off the joist. If you can notice, there is a bit of a gap there. Now, if I just boarded my other board to that, the likelihood would be that once I'm channeling across the edge, it'll move and the fresh plaster will keep cracking. And if it doesn't crack, it most certainly will crack later on, because any movement on those original boards there will cause cracks. And you can see I haven't finished cracking it or screwing it up, and this gap has already shrunk. But have a look at that, guys. No expense spared with the screws. I'm gonna put a few more on the edges too, and that's me almost ready to get the full sheet lifted up and screwed in. But look how tight it is now, guys, and no movement. Again, even with them wires, I'd be heart scared of wires and pipes screwing up through them, so always try and clip them up out of the way. Didn't have any actual proper clips, but if you can carefully put a nail in underneath the wire to hold it and one above, so that the wire can't just shake back out again, so it's actually safe. Technically that would probably be more fire rated now too, because it's a metal fixing that'll stop, if there, God forbid, there was ever a fire, the metal won't burn as quick as just the wood and stuff. Or, well, even if the plasterboard fell, the wire falls down then, because it's only the plasterboard holding the wire up. So now that it's tacked to the timber, it should hold up there a wee bit longer. But now for the hard part, guys. Thankfully, I don't need a labourer here, because I've got a bit of a hand here in a minute, you'll see. So just getting it lined up. I know that my back isn't just quite perfect, but I'm just getting all the other sides. There's 3 sides that are sitting perfect, so just get them on, and then thankfully I have a nice prop. I actually have 2 props, but because it's not an 8x4 sheet, the one prop should hold it. fingers crossed, we'll find out in a minute whether it just bursts right through or not. But hopefully this prop holds good enough. So there's a bit of a look. Well, I know that back there is kissing somewhere, but I'd rather it really tight and scribe it in the suit than being way too short, especially as I have a joist that I need to catch there. So if I end up going too short, it's going to be harder and harder to actually, fix it to that joist. So just double checking everything, guys, and then getting a few screws ready. I haven't actually drove them home because I'm going to move this board over tighter again. The tighter the joint, to me, the less likely it will crack. So just try and get it readjusted here shortly. Get a few screws ready to go. And again, just checking to see what's there. But yeah, it's all about patching. To me is all about, you do want to sort of get them done quickly because they're just a patch. And when I'm here, my idea is get everything done as quick as possible so you can get the mix mixed and get it on so it's setting. But there you go, guys. Just adjusted that as it's a lot tighter now on that left hand side, so that, again, like I said, I was sort of half tempted to jiggle the board into the middle and scrim it, but it can be horrible to trowel up a big joint with scrim because it bees all it tries to sag out of the scrim. Basically, you're just relying on the scrim holding up. So I really looked at it and decided, no, I'm gonna have to just stick with the wee strip up the side, and then I can offer a scrim right up over the top of it anyhow. So again, it's a bit of extra work, but to me, I'd rather do the extra work now before I start mixing, and then you're having problems trying to screw it up, or trying to fill it out with plaster and then trying to screw another bit up deciding later on. So you're better to make the call straight away and get it done. As you can see, still a wee gap up the side here. One of them wee nightmare cuts, but it is what it is. Just need to scribe that and get that in, but it's nice and tight everywhere else, so I can afford to have a bit of extra work on one side. And the only other way to do that would have been maybe, cut two boards, like, cut a bit off that board and cut a bigger bit, which might have, made life a bit easier. Just need a screw. For some reason, just haven't screwed that one joist there, but I will screw that. Again, guys, only 3 foot wide, and you can see the amount of screws I've put in. So this board's never going to drop anytime soon. So quite a few boards are screws in the board, and unfortunately when I screwed that joist up, plaster all came loose that side, so I will be PVAing it and all the edges here, just so it's the wee dry edges and everything sets all nice and uniform for me. Again, nothing worse than doing a patch, plasterboard hanging, and then the bare old plasterboard drying in tighter and causing a lump. And what I'm just saying here now is I'm going to just scrim tape all these edges. Here's a bit of a look now. So I was able to go over the whole joint there, and then just offered it up more or less anywhere there's a bit of a gap. Just offer it up, as you can see, just offer it up to it. Try and overlap the gap a wee bit, and that'll just help sort of bond it and bind it, and hopefully reduce any chances of cracking. And you can sort of see some of the PVA around the edges. Plasterboard staying on, get the mix done. Nice. Not too stiff, not too wet. Could have went a wee bit stiffer, but I have a bit to do, so I'm not too panicked with it. Again, guys, if you're trying to DIY this, you might want to go a wee bit tighter than the mix that I just did. But I actually have another wee patch to do elsewhere, so didn't want to be having it setting down here and going up there and having it too stiff of a mix, doing another patch upstairs and then coming back down and this being too hard to trowel up. So again, just starting on the edges here, working off the cornice first, as to me that's the main angle. It's the angle you're going to see coming in, so it'll be the angle that I'll concentrate on. Technically it's the only angle, the rest is all joints around the edges. So yeah, it should be fun. Get it coated. Again, kind of want to, coat it neatly as possible. Try and leave as little lines as possible. I personally, on this coat, I filled out pretty much everywhere in one go, and I did make I did make a slight mistake where I didn't wet down the edges, guys, before I actually started, and I realised there just here I was like, flip, didn't wet the edges, but I decided, you know what, I'll stick with it. I'll go around and then I'll clean all my edges up afterwards, and I'll wash them, I'll scrape them, and it also means I was kind of using it as a bit of an advantage at that stage, because I thought anything loose around the edges, any paper that I've missed, I'll get it with that now, and hopefully then it won't disturb my plaster work later on, won't get in the way, won't peel off or flake off, so it'll just be an extra wee help around the edges. Did give them a good scrape before I started, and I did have clean water and brush sitting there, but I just thought I'll just stick with it, coat away. But again, if you're new to plastering, guys, I highly recommend you wet them edges, because burr plaster dries your fresh skim up instantly. And what happens is, if you don't control that suction around the edge, what will actually happen is the plaster will keep building up, because it's so hard and dry, so it's not going to come off of the trowel. All you're going to do is add more over the top and over the top and over the top, and the next minute you've got this horrible bumpy joint that's just, you're going to need a mountain of sandpaper to try and get it flat again, which again, not ideal. That's not what you want to be doing. You want to be doing it right from the word go. Again, I've been doing patches for too many years now, and a lot of times I do it this way, especially on smaller ones. This one's a wee bit bigger, but on smaller patches I do tend to just coat them with my first coat, clean up my hawking trowel, and then go up and scrape it around the edge and wet it down, and then second coat. I don't know why. I think sometimes because it's a patch, I'm thinking, well, I'll let a bit of suction hit the stuff, and it might send it forward a bit quicker. But again, the proper and good way is to actually wet all your edges around them joints first, and then get your first and second coat on. Technically, you would actually probably clean the edges again anyway after your first coat, just to be safe. And yes, smaller patches, if they're really small, you could maybe just sort of one coat them, get it out in one go, clean your edges, and then let it set. But I would still recommend just scrape another bit of stuff over the top, just to make sure you're well flushed out. Especially then, there's some nice shaped patches where it's like, the size of the trowel, so you're just really point to point. Where I don't have this luxury here. It's a wee bit wider than a trowel. You could get a spatula or a straight edge and pull it from point to point if you really did wish. I'm confident to get it nice and straight to the original with just a trowel. Again, the hawker trowel used here, just using the pointsman hawk, and this is a Tyzac trowel I'm going to use for coating. And the reason for that is this is my rendering trowel. It is broken for skim, and I could finish this completely with skim, or any skim or any wall or ceiling. I could use this trowel to finish it from stage 1 to the final polish hard trowel, if that's what you want to do, as it's well broken, and it's it's sharp and it's curved. It won't leave much lines and stuff, but I still will most likely pull out the refiner trowel and give it a quick trowel over with that. This is me now pointing out the fact that I need to scrape and clean down, wet down all these edges now, as I missed out a bit of a stage. So yeah, it's got to be done, guys. Can't let it get any harder, or it will just be harder to scrape. It's still soft, it still just comes off nice and handy. Um, but this is where, to me, this is the very most important part, guys, is the edge of the joints. If you don't get them flush, and it's a big bump, to me, it's what shows up on all patches that I would notice on ceilings or plasterboard walls. I always see the bump, I always see the edge, because it's not flush. If you flush it in, it's much harder to see. Most times, the only reason you would see it would be maybe because it looks fresher painted, more than the shape. So, you know, to me, that's what you gotta be concentrating on. Is all your edges round the corners, round that angle and stuff. Just clean it all up. So again, this is good as well, because it gives me a bit of time to let that first coat just pick up a little bit, to then second coat it. Again, on patches like this, you don't always have to say to yourself, oh, I need to mix two mixes. I need a first mix for my first coat, and then I need another bit for my second coat. You can, realistically, you can use the same stuff, especially the way what I'm doing here. It actually really is handy. You're cleaning around the edge, giving yourself something to do while you're sort of letting that first coat pick up. It's definitely working in pretty well for me here. So I'm not rushing things, because if you do go too heavy, again, there is one heavy area here, and it's mostly at the cornice, and I have that all built out. So that was the first stuff on. I had it all built out. That's probably why I also choose to start there, because I knew it was the heavier coated area, where the rest is all 2-3 mil thick. So not majorly thick, but that's good, because it means my second coat, it's just really a wee lick over and a flattening. Pardon me, guys. I'm just getting off a bit of a bad cold. And again, I did want to be speaking in somebody's house. I think they're all trying to relax. So I don't want to be sitting talking about plastering. They'll think, why is this plaster in there talking to himself? Which occasionally I do sort of talk to the camera and talk to you guys, so that you know what stage I'm at and stuff. But I thought this one would be a nice voiceover. So there you are, guys. Give me a bit more time there, and now it's time for the second coat. As you can see, let's see what distance this one hogful takes. So let's see if it gets me halfway around, or will it finish the whole entire job. Technically, when you are plastering, you will notice that if it takes you like a bag to coat something, first for your first coat, say you're doing 2 small walls, and it takes your bag to get them all first coated. Most times it'll only take you about half a bag, maybe even a wee bit less, the second coat. To me, it sort of works out even, if you used 3 bags to put on, like sometimes one bag would nearly be enough to second coat everything, because your first coat, you really are filling out, and you're trying to keep it as neat as possible as well. So when you come to the second coating time, it normally works in a lot better. But yeah, I still haven't taken an extra scoop, have I? So I'll look how far we get on. But definitely these edges are a lot nicer work too now that I've cleaned them down and washed them. So yeah, not too bad, guys. Getting it all done with one hogful here. When, if anybody did count, I'd say it would take probably about 4 or 5 hogfuls the first time. I'm cheating. I'm taking an extra wee scoop here, but I doubt I'll need all of that. Two extra wee scoops, just to finish off. Suppose you're better making sure that you're taking enough. Climbing up and down the ladder for no reason. But again, working off them joints there. Does look a bit of a rough, messy sort of patch, because just the way the paper's coming off, and then you have white, then you have the original skim, and then you have the new skim here. But there's no point judging the job too early. Let's see we'll judge it completely at the end. See what kind of marks we get. I can let you guys mark it in the comments. you can give me a mark out of 10. Um, 10 out of 10 will be, that will be pinned comments. But yeah, no, honestly, you just give me your full opinion. I don't mind. If anybody else is a plasterer there and they want to add their advice, what they would have done, how they would have done it quicker or better, definitely all ears, all ears. Not that there's too many ways to do a patch like this. Again, some comments do say it's not rocket science, but again, I've never seen a rocket scientist plaster a ceiling, so you never do know. Um, you know, like, could Elon Musk plaster this? Realistically, could he? Nah, not a chance. But yeah, here we are. We're plastering it. Never mind Elon Musk. And here we are with the first flattening, guys. Just using a wet brush here, just to wet the edges, clean the edges as I'm going. Get them, you know. Technically, when I trowel stuff up, guys, I want to leave it to as close to perfection as possible. And the reason for that is because through my time working with plaster, sometimes you do plaster stuff and it just sets on you, or it sets a lot quicker than it should do. And it is very warm. You notice I've lost the jumper here, so it's very warm in this house. So the idea is get this neat as possible, as quick as possible, and then that means if it does set, it's a bit more easy controlled and troweled up. So if it just goes on you, it's not going to be such a mess to have to trowel big lines out and polish them down in and fill holes. You've kind of got it all done, and it just means that the next trowel is easier as well. It's kind of like an investment. You put your investment in at the start, like the preparation. I did all that hard work in the preparation so that later on I'm reaping the benefits of it. And the little baby here, little Max, trying to wake up on me. So she is in this corner. Hopefully she can last another couple of minutes to get this voiceover done. And the wife's just been bathing the other two, so everybody's getting nice and clean. But yeah, try and push on and get this voiceover done before I get interrupted. But yeah, troweling up pretty well. It's tightened a wee tiny bit. Nothing major, nothing that I control. But like I said, all the investment was done previous, all the hard work was done previous to try and make things work in that wee bit easier later on stages. What do I mean by that? Think about it, guys. Screwed up them boards, so there's no loose boards. If I didn't do that, and then you notice, and obviously you learn these things as you go on. I was an apprentice before as well, so you technically you learn from your mistakes. If you don't, you need to just quit. If you're not learning from your mistakes, guys, you're either not making mistakes or you're just constantly doing it wrong. But if I didn't screw up them boards at the edge and I'm troweling to this, sooner or later I'm going to notice, oh, that board's really loose, and then I'm going to have to start trying to guess where is that joist again. And you're going to be putting screws up, which means you're setting the trowel down. You're off the plaster and you're back on the bit of joinery work trying to screw up or nail up them joists again, and then you're going to be back troweling, and because things might move up, it means now you're trying to cut back plaster to get it flush again. So that's something. Again, with the wee cutting, at the edge there, that again was an investment, because now I'm not having to put extra plaster up into a big gap and not relying on scrim tape holding it up, where and technically I've scrimmed it again anyway, guys, so it is scrimmed. It's not just relying on scrim holding the plaster up. There's a wee strip of board up screwed in there nice and tight, so there's no movement there, and it's not a 3/4 inch bit of plaster just hanging ready to fall down and scrim tape me across the face. Again, it has happened, and it's a nightmare. So there we go, guys. Just one more stage done, and you can see we're losing light now. So again, here we are back, about to trowel away again and get these edges all cut in even nicer and even more flush. I just have to be careful of the ladder. It is quite a high ladder, quite a high ceiling. My bench, I did bring the bench in, and I actually set the plaster up on the bench so it wasn't bending my back down to scoop stuff out, and I wasn't bending down to get water. So everything's nice and high for me, just at my waist level. And like I said, if you are using ladders and steps or anything, just be careful. Make sure you're safe. For instance, this ladder tends to want to slide a wee bit just because there's a dust sheet down on a wooden floor, so it kind of has a wee bit of slippiness to it. But yeah, on to the next trial here. Using a wee tiny bit more water, and again concentrating on them angles and them edges, as that's what it's all about with patching. At least for me anyway. I want to tend to get them all round the joint as flat and flush as possible, so that when it's painted it becomes absolutely invisible. And to me that's what a patch is all about, guys, getting the thing as seamless as possible. But yeah, obviously it's tightening now, so I am putting that wee bit more pressure in, and you will find that even with patches, but sometimes you can almost over trowel them, and I can't really go over that enough, guys. With plastering is all about timing. If you trowel too early and then you come back and you trowel again too early, what you can cause on yourself is a lot of unevenness. You almost roll the plaster up, especially around the edges. You'll tend to roll them up, or if you have a bead or a rule or something, if you're working, say you're working patching at a corner and you keep troweling it one way, especially if you trowel too early, you'll tend to bunch the plaster up and cause yourself like ripples. So again, that's why it's adamant that you really, not only you control your suction and your background, which we did earlier with the PVA, and then the wetting of the angles around the edges in this scenario, but really it's all about controlling the background, suction, and then it's about your timing. Again, if you don't control your suction, your timing's going to be a lot less. You're going to be having to chase it more. You're going to have to, you're going to be under more pressure. So if you feel the prep and control your suction, you're going to work a lot harder. Sometimes a wee bit of suction's good. Believe it or not, a wee bit of suction will help key, and it will actually help it set off. If you're doing something small, you might not necessarily want to be waiting for the next trowel. The next trowel, you might want a wee bit of suction so that you can get on to the next trowel, and you can actually get it troweled in and get home. As not everybody wants to spend all their time in work, so just some things to bear in mind when you're doing some patches or some walls, that how much you're going to kill the suction, how much you're going to have to be under pressure. The likes of a bare wall, if all the paper's been stripped off and all the paint stripped off, and it's a bare plaster wall but it's all scratched, maybe got some chips, nail holes, old patches in it, cracks in it and stuff, and say you're in doing the job and they want the whole wall re-skimmed so it's nice and fresh again, then you might want to PVA that, like really PVA that. You might want to PVA it to seal it, and then you might want to PVA it again just after you mix, because them walls do tend to draw the moisture of the plaster a lot quicker. Personally, I love plastering over walls like that, because after the first trial I find they're really pulling in nice for me, and I've got it flattened in lovely. I've like I said earlier there, all the preparation would be done by that stage for me, and it's all just about just really polishing it off. So I tend to use them walls, I tend to get on them a bit quicker with my troweling, because I know this is going to pull in quicker. I know the timing on it. I know I'm going to have to first and second coat it's quicker and neater, and then I'm going to need to really flatten it in really neat and tidy, clean my angles and stuff. And when I do all that, I know that the wall's really set up now for finishing. And again, you do tend to be able to get round them walls a bit quicker and a bit earlier. But it is experience to learn all these timings and to learn the backgrounds and the suctions, and hopefully, you know, people watching these, you are gaining a wee bit of my knowledge and putting it into your own practice. And the more you watch of these, the more you listen, the more you'll learn, the more you do it yourself, the more you'll understand that way. But here's a quick look, guys. These edges here, bit of a dirty camera, but yeah, it's coming in pretty well. Still, obviously needs a wee bit more hard work in it. But as you can see, still a few wee lines. Gonna hit them before I actually take a bit of a break, because if you were to leave them and come back after your break and just say that the heating's on in the house all of a sudden, they could set up a lot quicker. So here we are, guys. This is going to be trial 3, and by this stage, really, really the back should be broke. You don't want to have too much lines or holes or anything to be filling out at this stage. Technically, if you've been following the channel for that long, you know that you shouldn't have any. But here I am with my favourite skimming trowel at the moment, the Refina steel trowel, and this thing is like an absolute razor blade. This one's been retired now from sand cement for a long time, and all I use it for is skimming, whether it be patching or just skimming, even on site. I still used it on site, where I would coat with my floating trowel, second coat with my floating trowel, and then it would all be the Refina, and then it would be super flexes, and that would be all the way to the finish. But again, guys, just working off the more important angle with that cornice is, as that's the first thing you're going to sort of see when you do look up, and then obviously the edges, working them all in right around, making sure not to leave any fat marks or dirty water marks on it, because after this trial you're pretty much done, guys. You'll not be able to do much more with it. Just got a wee drink there, my voice starting to go. But yeah, just really pay attention to all your seams at this stage, because like I say, once the stuff sets, that's it, guys. It's gone. It's hard. It's turned back to stone pretty much. So you're gonna wanna make sure you've got it all done when it's soft and workable. And like I said, first and second trowel, every trial's important, but your earlier trials are probably more important than the later ones, because they're setting up. Your first trial setting up your second trial, your second trial setting up the third trial, and the third trial's more or less finishing it. You might want to just give it a bit of a polish after, or another wee once over, just to make sure, as I will here in a wee moment. But yeah, I'm pretty happy now. Things is going my way. It's all about just finishing it now, getting a nice cut on it, and then it'll be packing up and cleaning up. But I will have to actually admit, the owner did most of the cleaning. I did all the packing. He actually covered up and cleaned up for me, so he took a lot of the work off my hands when it came to that. Which, as you see out the window there, it's getting very dark, and it's it's time for home. So we're still trailing up anyway. Getting a wee bit of background noise here, but it's okay. So we're still trailing up with the water. Again, it doesn't need a big lot of water, but you want to put enough on where when you're trailing it, you're not tearing anything. I'm still wetting the edges as well, and again, it's just really lubricating the surface so that the trowel doesn't just rip and tear the surface. Especially now, if you do get that, there's 2 reasons for that. Is again timing, and also you're either a wee bit too late or you're a wee bit too early. And I tend to find if it starts you getting these wee surface tears, the best thing to do is just leave it a wee while. Just leave it a little bit longer. Give it another 5 minutes, give it another 10 minutes, maybe even. And also clean water. If you've got dirty water, it might tear on you as well. So if you are getting that, spend your time, go and clean your bucket out. make it spotlessly cold, clean water in, clean out your brush and clean your trowel, and then come back in, and then give it another wee go. And if it tears, just give it a wee bit more time before you keep on going. Again, every job's different. Um, I do try and cover all the aspects of what can happen, what might happen, what shouldn't happen, and what you want to happen. But all those things tend to, on every different job, tend to, vary and bleed into each other. What you want to happen doesn't always happen. Um, you know, so that's plastering for you. Every job's different, every wall's different, every ceiling's different. It's all, each house is different. The heat might be on one house, the other house, might be on site and it might be cold. But here we are, guys. Another wee quick look. I'm pretty happy with the way things is coming in here. I'm just going to now give it a wee quick super flex for the win. Um, Again, you don't have to super flex things, guys. You don't have to polish to death on any walls or ceilings you do. Personally, for me, this is really, this is when I walk away after I do this. That's when I walk away and I know I've, it's basically a final check. If you didn't want to polish it, you want to have a, not that I'm polishing it, not trying to put a big shine on. I'm just giving it a quick rub, just to make sure it's not too hairy. And to me, it's just really, I'm running my eye around the job and making sure there is no bumps, there is no holes, there's no dirty watermarks, there's no, wee scratch marks, there's no imperfections, there's nothing that I'm not happy with. And that's why the super trowel for me, super flex trowel for me is, it's the final look around the job. And once that's done, I know I can do no more else to that wall or that ceiling, that patch. I can do no more else to it that's going to make it any better. I've already done everything. So, again, though, if you do that and you see a wee hole, definitely try and fill it in before you leave. But to me, that's really what the Superflex trowel signifies. Again, if you really wanted to polish up your walls, them Superflex trowels will do that. And they will, I could trowel something where it would reflect just as much as that pane of glass there. You see the reflection of the light in that. I'm not joking. I can trowel a wall till it's like marble plaster that you could literally stand there and see a reflection in. You could shine a light on and it would shine back at you. But again, it's not necessary. You don't need to do it. Flat and matte is technically, that is the sought after finish you're going for. But a little shine does feel a bit nicer to the touch. It's not hairy, it's not too grainy or anything. It doesn't feel dusty. It feels sealed in and it feels nice. It looks nice. So I do sort of somewhat recommend it, but not to the point where paint's gonna slide off it. Again, in our old house, I did test the theory. I did ceilings. I left ones flat and matte, and I polished ones like like two trials with a Superflex both ways, and they both, after enough time when they both dried, they both painted the exact same. So, you could technically say you wasted your time then doing all the trials. And anybody that does a hard trial, technically you could say to them you're kind of wasting your time, because when they're both painted, they will look the same. But again, the whole point of it was, well, it was a test for me in that scenario. But the whole point of a trial is it will just feel that bit nicer. If you're done a land wall or something, and the customer comes in and touches it, once you're gone, they'll feel a nice smooth wall. They'll be able to see it and they'll be able to feel it. So you'll be taking two cents boxes there. So they'll be happy, no doubt. But yeah, just really the finishing stages now, guys, and concentrating on just this edge. There's still a bit of paper around, not where the patch is, but just a wee bit beside it, just picking at it there. I did try my best to cut the paper off straight, as in running a Stanley blade across, but paper seemed to have a mind of its own.
goes an eternity.